Good morning. This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net. And today on Avoid the Maze, we will be discussing it's been my least favorite subject, but hopefully Bob is going to make it my favorite subject about personal finance. And I always feel like I'm struggling even when I look at my bank account and I go, oh, that's a hefty number to have. And then I look at it a couple days later after the bills have been paid, and I wonder, was it hefty or not? So welcome, Bob DePasquale. Did I say it right?
Pretty good, pretty good. DePasquale. That's, that's
Okay.
that's pretty darn good. So I can't
Uh,
no complaints.
okay. And so you you have this passion, as it says in your bio,
Mhm.
about personal finance. And how did you get there? I mean, most of us don't want to even think about what we don't have.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Karen. Thank you for having me. And the way I got interested in personal finance was, well, first of all, let me take a step back. I have a master's degree in broadcast journalism, and I actually worked in sports radio for a couple of years out of grad school. And I thought that was going to be my career. And when I was younger, if I wasn't going to be playing about sports, I was going to be talking about them
Right.
for a living, and that was my plan. And I grew up in a home. My mother worked in a bank for many years, so she had a pretty good idea how to balance a checkbook, and she would teach me some of the basics. But I never thought it'd be anything related to my professional life. I just thought it was a good tool to understand, and and just be a good manager of the resources that I had, whether it was a lot of resources or a little. I thought that was important. But I actually was recruited out of the radio industry into the financial industry. It's a funny story, actually. The recruiter went to the school that my wife worked at and asked the ladies in the office, do you know anyone that would want to work in finance? And my wife's a kindergarten teacher. I think she might have been teaching second grade at the time, but either way, it was funny because the ladies were like, no, like, why would you come to an elementary school to
Right.
look for, business professionals or people that would want to work in finance? And they looked at him and they're like, no, we don't know anyone. And he's like, come on, you got to know somebody. And they actually gave him my wife's phone number. And they said, well, Mrs. DePasquale's husband's a nice guy. Why don't you give her a call? So he must have called her right away. I mean, he walked out of the office and just called her. And I mean, she was teaching her class. She couldn't answer the phone, and he left a message. And she came home that day and said to me, hey, this guy called me, and she was familiar with the company, but he's just like, just call him back. I know this is not anything that you would want to do, but just give him a call back, return the phone call. So I called him, I did. And we spoke for a little bit. And to be honest, Karen, I don't know why I said this to him, but I said, I'll call you back in 6 months. I think it was just to get him off the phone. That
Sure.
was just what came out of my mouth. And so 6 months went by, and I had a couple of days off during the holiday season, which was rare, working the radio job that I did. And I actually called him back. I said, you know what? My parents raised me to be a man of my word. Let me just call this guy back. And, he just kind of wined and dined us a little bit. I agreed to meet with him. He was just a really good recruiter, I guess. And the radio station and conglomerate that I was working for at the time was going through a tough time. I noticed some questionable moral business practices, at least in my opinion. And so he just caught me at the right time, and he recruited me into the financial industry. So I spent 12 great years working for that organization. And then during the pandemic, my business partner and I decided that there were some things that people were asking us to do that we just couldn't offer in that model. And we decided to open our own firm. And once I did that, I had a little bit more freedom to participate in, media like this, and kind of get back into that media training that I used to. And one of the things I did was write a book and started a podcast. All these different things happened. And so my journey into personal finance was really kind of unique. Like I said, I had a little bit of a background of understanding, but I worked professionally with families and I've been doing it now for over 13 years. But I think personal finance in itself is a little bit different than maybe, traditional financial planning that you might think of. But in my conversations with people over the years, I just realized there were things and questions and concerns that they had that were really important. And it made me realize how important money is in our lives. And now I don't believe money is the end all be all of anything, really. I truly believe it's just a tool. However, in our society, it's a very important tool. So it's very, very meaningful to me that people can manage what they have as best as possible.
And I think that's that's the important thing that we have to start teaching individuals today going forward. I know when I was growing up, um, it was all about, my parents were going to invest in certain things. That money was going to sit there for a long time. In the meantime, we were skimping and saving, because their extra, what they thought was their extra, was being funneled out. And I finally saw how good that was, because when my parents became retired and then they got ill, there was money. Okay. It wasn't that my brothers and I had to start paying for everything. My parents had just put enough away. And their comment was, maybe we were skipping and saving when you kids were little, but you know what? You didn't suffer from it. And I know in my own personality, you know, skipping and saving is not a big deal for me. But when I have sat across the table from a financial planner, that's always what scares me. It's like, why aren't you putting more away? And why do you have those bills? And sometimes, we get a little defensive. But I think if we start to understand it from a very low level and then build up, which is the things that I've been hearing from you and I've read about you, everyone needs to know how to add 1 and 1 to make equal 2.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so I love the fact that you came from sports broadcasting, because that's where my son's love had been. And he's making those transitions as well. And so what you've proved is that just because you have a love for something and you've had a pathway, sometimes we have to look at the fork in the road. And obviously that's what you did when you saw the media changing. So how difficult was it for you to go into the financial world from broadcasting?
Well, I don't really even remember. It was such a blur. There was so much going on, from a professional transition point. But I think if you just look at it from my personal perspective, so forget, learning a new job and a new company and new benefits and all that stuff that could be stressful for someone. But from a, personal standpoint, I was excited. I remember being excited. I remember my mom working in the bank, and I feel like I have a little bit of a head start. I feel like I could be successful. And like I said, before, it just was so important to me. It was something that I just felt like was needed. And I think that's part of the reason how John, by the way, John, was his name, the recruiter, and he ended up retiring right after he recruited me. I mean, I got hired and he quit. It was like, I don't know if it was like save the best for last, or he was like, oh my gosh, I had enough of this now. This guy is the last straw. I'm out of here. I'm not sure. And his wife actually worked for the company, so he would still be around at functions and stuff. So we had talked for many years. I haven't seen him now in a while, but it was he ended up retiring, but he did a really, really good job of instilling in me the importance of helping people with these things. So I felt so compelled that I was like, this is really, really needed in the world. And I don't know how much of a dent I made in the issue of personal finance, because I think, like you said, a lot of people are nervous around it. But I like to think I did good work over the past 13 years. And so really, John had a big part in that, because he encouraged me to, have some conviction in the purpose of that role. And it was a great role. So yeah, I mean, it was a little challenging from, like I said, from a professional perspective, getting, I had never had another job. I never had a real job, if you will. I mean, working in radio and broadcasting I wouldn't call that a normal job. The hours are strange. Right. It's not, our radio show, most of the shows I worked on were 3 hours long. And so like you're at 3 hours where you're like, all in, 100% attention, full energy, trying to entertain people. And then the rest of the day, there's other work to be done. It's not like you just work for 3 hours, but it's just it's a different dynamic. So that was definitely, an adjustment. But as far as the actual content and understanding and belief in what we were doing, no, that wasn't too challenging.
So you mentioned that the pandemic came, it was time for a change. And many of us have felt that. Some are still struggling with, how do I change? If I give up my job, what do I have to live off of? If I change jobs and it doesn't pay as much, then what do I do? But what was it about the pandemic that said, hey, I'm going to leave this? I've been doing it, you said, for like 13 years, and now you're going to go off on your own. Little scary it could be.
Yeah. So I have as conservative as my mom taught me to be with money, and I am. I mean, I'm managing people's money for a living, and part of what we do. So I have to be careful about it. But in the other areas of my life or other ways of applying my creativity, I'm pretty comfortable with risk, in a good way. I'm not the type of person who's I'm not jumping out of a plane without a parachute. I'm not, in
That's a
fact,
good thing.
I hate heights. I would be terrified of that. But when it comes to, risks in life and trying to do things bigger than yourself, like I love those challenges. So, during a pandemic, you might think, okay, during the pandemic, it's, a recessionary period, potentially, whether by definition or not. It just, there was a lot of stress for people, especially financially during that time. And you would think that that would be a horrible time to do that. But, my business partner and I were talking, in the way that just everything kind of came together at the same time. The opportunity to be a little bit more digital and have basically run an entire business virtually, which is a much different thing that we could ever
Right.
thought of. In our industry, typically we're meeting people in the office, but so like that was an opportunity. The thought of being able to be a little bit more flexible with media, because previously, when you work for a large company, compliance and regulatory reasons, going to limit you, and if not limit you from doing those things, it take quite a bit of extra time to make sure that you do it based on those protocols. And it's nothing against the organization. It has to be that way when you have thousands upon thousands of people working, but when you own your own firm, you can do whatever you want,
Right.
because you're the compliance person, right? The buck stops with you. So as long as I know that I'm doing it legally, then I'm okay with it. So that opportunity. And then, a little bit of an entrepreneurial itch. I mean, we had been advising entrepreneurs for so many years, and it was like, well, what would it be like if we were actually entrepreneurs ourselves, right? And not just working for another company. And then finally, Karen, I think the thing that put it over the top is I had multiple families that we work with come to us and ask us to offer some services to them, like they were willing to pay us and compensated for us, that we just were not allowed to do in that business model. And so it kind of struck me, like John did when he was recruiting me, to say, hey, people really need help with their personal finances and their budgeting, and their insurance, and understanding how those things work. And it gave me conviction to make that switch. Well, I kind of, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever verbalized this before. Wow, this is really cathartic. Thank you for asking this question. um, I thought to I thought to myself, I said, wow, people really need this. Like, they really need help with these things. And I got my hands tied right now. I can't help them. I'd love to be able to do that. So it's really funny. I actually called up my business partner, Stacy, and I said, Stacy, at the time we were just working together on the same team. She had moved down from Colorado, and I had invited her to join my team. And so we were just working together. We weren't actually, business partners, although we worked together all the time. But I said, hey, Stacy, what would you think about us starting our own company? And to be honest with you, Karen, I expected her to look at me. Oh, actually, it was on the phone, because we weren't having in-person meetings during the pandemic. So we were having our team meeting, actually. But I said this to her over the phone after the meeting was over, and it was just the two of us on the call. And I said that, and I expected her to be like, what are you, crazy? We got it so good here. Like, why would we move? We have a business. We're making financially, we're being compensated well. We're working with people. We're kind of living our dream of helping people. And I expected her to say that, but she goes, oh, I think it's a great idea. I was like, what? That was it. Like, dead silence on the other side of the phone. And so in a short period of time, it all came together. But yeah, it was quite a transition. And, Stacy, our skills match each other well. Like, we're very, very different people, but that's why I think it makes us effective. And so when she said that to me, when she felt that way too, I was like, oh, wow, this is it. Like, this is the time to make the switch. And we put all that together. And yeah, in a pretty short period of time, we had started building the new firm. Now, we really couldn't say anything because, we were still working for them, and we had to put it all together behind the scenes. But I'll never forget that day. And it within a couple of weeks, we were already starting to put the pieces together.
I love it. I do. I really do, because, so many of us sit around and we dream, how could I do this? And I know when I was working with corporate America and I was blogging and doing a few podcasts on the side, I kept thinking, this is what I want to do 24/7. I'm no longer happy where I am. I'm not contributing the way I want to. And I just remember thinking it can't happen. And you can make it happen. Sometimes you got to be real quiet about it, like you had to in the beginning, because you don't want anybody to think that you're stealing their business. And what I understand you to say is that part of the reason for starting it is because there were services that the corporation wasn't handling. But
Correct.
there were services that you knew that you and Stacy could handle. So give me an idea what those services would be like that a big corporation is not going to handle.
Sure. So one simple one, I mean, the thing that stuck out like a sore thumb to us is that we were doing a lot of tax planning for people, Karen. So we were helping them work through all of their benefits at work and their contributions to their retirement accounts and figuring out the best timing and the ways to structure their investments and their income so that they could maximize their, their tax effectiveness,
Sure.
if you will, right? I mean, everything is done legally, obviously, but there's certain laws and rules that you want to make sure that you do them well. And so we never had a problem with the CPAs that they were working with, but we weren't allowed to file taxes. So we would spend umpteen hours tax planning, but we weren't allowed to prepare their taxes. And so then we would have to have communications, and then the clients would be paying their CPA by the hour. So they would incur extra expense because we would have to go review all the work that we did with the CPA. And it took a lot of time and it cost the clients extra money.
Sure.
And our clients would come to us and say, well, why would I just spend, $500, $1,000 extra dollars for you to consult with my CPA? Why don't you just sign the documents and send them out to the IRS? Well, for legal reasons and things, we just weren't allowed to do that. So from a technical perspective, that's the one that sticks out the most. We just weren't allowed to file people's taxes. So now we're able to do that. And there's other things too, but that's the one that sticks out the most. And then and something for a little bit less technical and more abstract is people were asking us to help them transition their philanthropic legacies to the next generation and develop plans that they could, that they could leave a legacy, right?
Right.
And so that takes a lot of hours too, because we have to have meetings with families, get the matriarch and patriarch of a family on the same page with the next generation, and maybe they have a business to transition. And that takes a lot of hours too. And we would love to do that, but we realized that model was just not effective for the amount of families that we were serving previously. And we were not allowed to get compensated for things like that. And so what happened was families would come to us and say, hey, we'll fly you out to our meeting or our family event, or we'll bring multiple people, we'll come in the office and we'll pay you to help us develop this plan and this family legacy and mission plan, which, takes a lot of brainstorming and, building out and making it visual. And we just couldn't do that. We didn't have the time. I mean, it sounds terrible. I don't want to seem like, we're some special people that were so busy we can't help the clients that are already paying us, but we wanted to do that work, and that that could take 10 hours to organize an event or do something, and we just wasn't effective. So we wanted to be able to do that too. So now when families come to us and ask us those sort of questions, we actually have a system and a protocol that we can take them through. That's all part of our process. And the great thing about it too, it's much easier to understand it now from, for people that everything's transparent. They know what the cost of our service is, and it's all inclusive. So they pay us one fee and we do everything. And we don't have to worry about nickel and diming them left and right. And, them worrying about other expenses from other professionals. So it's just a really, really good fit. But I appreciate you asking that question, because it took us a while to figure that out and how to structure all of it. But I think it's a really, really important part of our offering.
Well, and I know that I've worked with a large firm in the past that was, helping us identify where our money should go. But it was very impersonal. And they did a good job for us. I will say that. Okay. But there were a lot of things that we did not understand. And we just sort of like did it blindly because, hey, they're a renowned organization. I guess it was maybe like 2 years ago, we started working with an individual, basically doing something similar like you are, who
Mhm.
said, okay, you know, you have so much money that you've put over here, but do you know, because of your age, some of that money needs to be spent? And it was like, oh no, I want to save it. I want to save it. And spending it also could mean that we could gift it. And so understanding that, that certainly helped us, because if we had not had that one-on-one contact, I'm not sure what would have happened at tax time. So even though I started out by saying I don't like talking about money, um, if you don't talk about it, you don't know how to plan for your future. And I think it's really important that we all at least have that opportunity to learn. If you choose to do it your own way, that's your choice. But let the professionals at least guide you. And that
Mhm.
sounds like what you and Stacy have been doing since the pandemic. Um, do you meet with a lot of your clients via Zoom or something like this because of the pandemic?
Yes, and a couple of things about what you said stick out to me about the personal aspect of financial planning. I think there's a lot of firms out there, and I think of just about all of them. I don't think I've ever run into a firm that I feel is like completely ineffective. I think they all have the different benefits depending on the size,
Right.
the type of service they offer. Is it inclusive? Is it a sales-based model? Is it a fee-based model? There's all kinds of different ways to look at it. So it just depends on which one makes the most sense for you. And I always encourage people to interview at least 3 different organizations and advisors. And when you talk about, how, like what Stacy and I are going for, what the business that we're trying to build, and we have a much different model than we used to. I mean, we used to serve 1,700 families, and the max size of our team was 6 or 5.5, really, and it was a mile wide and an inch deep, right? And so I think we were very, very proficient with the technical aspects of the things that we did. So if those things fit you, I mean, I think we did a really, really good job. I'd say we were at the top of the list of people that we could help. But if maybe you needed some other service, or you didn't need those few things, it probably wasn't a good fit. And we tried to be honest about that. But when you get referrals, and when people are believe in you, we had a lot of new customers come in the door, and we tried to serve them as best as possible. And I think part of the reason why we decided to make our transition was we wanted to serve a mile deep and an inch wide with much less families. Not that I didn't want to serve all those other families, but we felt we could do a better job if we made our book, if you will, slimmer. And so that enables us to have those deeper relationships. I mean, if you're looking for a confidant, a friend, a part. We actually don't even use the word clients anymore. We use the word partners, because we want to partner with these families and help them accomplish what it is that they're trying to do. And so if you're looking for that deep relationship, and I really believe that money should be a joyful thing. It isn't always.
Right.
I try to be as positive as possible, but I'm also a realist. But I think there's a definite shift that people can have, and I've found that there are ways and tools and practices that you can implement to make sure that really money truly is a joyful thing and not something to be scared of, right? And there were certainly times in our previous role, Karen, where people didn't want to hear from us. Like we
I'm
would call
sure.
them like, oh no, what's happened? Like, what's the problem? Bob and Stacy are calling, or any of the other people on our team. And that was not a good feel. That was, I didn't like that. And now people love hearing from us. Like when we call, it's like, oh, I'm so happy to hear from you, because it's not this, it's not a burden. It's something, there's a good reason to be in contact, right? And so money should definitely be a positive tool. And I really hope that we're spreading that message.
So do I understand this correct? You wrote a book. Tell us what the book can do for us.
Great question. So when I was writing the book, someone asked me or suggested that, oh, this book is going to be an excellent tool, kind of like a sales magnet for your business. You can use this book to promote what it is that you're doing, and hopefully people will want to hire you. And to be honest with you, Karen, I was already deep into my thought and process for the book, and that's not what I thought about it at all. And it's actually not why I wrote the book. And I don't want to criticize people for using their book and their thought leadership as a tool for the business. That's not the case. But for me, it just wasn't actually what we were trying to do. So as you mentioned, we served so many families previously. We're actually only serving 15 now. So 1% of what we used to serve,
Wow.
we're serving now. So the design for the book it wasn't actually to tell people what we did and how we could help them. I'm more than happy to do that, as you can tell. I mean, I'm very passionate about what we do. But the reason why I wrote the book is actually because I felt like there's a lot of stressful topics about technology, social media, ads, and money. And they're so intertwined in our personal finances these days that I feel like there's millions of people that need to hear this message. And in the vast majority of them, Stacey and I will not be able to serve and help. So I wrote the book for a much more massive audience, and for people, which is most of us these days. I mean, statistics show that just about everyone in the world is on their mobile devices and technology, and they're consistently using applications. So the book is actually entitled Personal Finance in a Public World. And it's about how social media, ads, and technology affect our money decisions. And some of the data that I did a lot of research. I mean, I have experience with the technical sides of personal finance when it comes to, investments, insurance, philanthropy, retirement planning, all those things. That stuff I know. But the best advice I ever got when writing the book was, it's not about what you know, it's about what you want to know.
Right.
And my curiosity led me down a bunch of rabbit holes. And there's a lot of information in there about how technology works and how the algorithms and systems use, how they're designed to keep you on the platform and ultimately spend your money.
Right.
And so you might think to this point, oh, this is going to be some boring, nerdy book about, computer programming. It's actually not that at all. It's very, very story based. So there's a lot of stories, and it ties in some of the technical stuff to help you understand why the stories are relevant. And it really teaches you how to use money and technology as positive tools. And I always like to say this too, as much as the book is about money and technology, and that's, if you're interested in those things, it's absolutely the book for you. But what I found was in my research that relationships with those things and also with other people are the number one driving force to our happiness and fulfillment, related to our finances, believe it or not. And so I actually was surprised how the book ended in itself. And I don't want to give it away, but I think you'd be surprised on how important it is that we have healthy relationships in our life and how that leads to our financial satisfaction.
Well, I have to agree with you that there are too many of us who are living day to day, not understanding what a healthy relationship is, even a healthy relationship within ourselves. And that's one of the reasons we started this podcast, because I started realizing that as I was talking to different coaches and I was talking to people such as yourself, coming up with not necessarily new ideas, but a newer format of an idea. It was like, I need to get this word out because I'm hearing it and it's important, and not, it may not be everything in your book from A to Z that's going to be important to me, but there's probably going to be something in it that's going to trigger me and say, hey, I didn't know about that. Or, hey, let me try that. And I think to our listeners, it's important that we don't just shy away from the things that we don't know or we assume we know. And when I said to you in the beginning, I don't like numbers and math, I had this evil thing hanging over my head for about 50 years. And I went back to school and got my master's degree. And the first thing I was told was I had to retake my freshman college math course because it had totally changed. And I looked at my husband and I said, I don't want to take it. He goes, well, then you're not going to get your master's. And I fought almost all the way through that class until the end, when I realized these numbers were my friends. They were telling me, how healthy I am or how sick I am. And once I started looking at it that way, it was much, much easier. I'm happier than I've ever been. I don't have as much money as I once had, but that's okay because I'm learning how to use what I have in the right way. So I'm sure that's what you and Stacy are doing, because that's what it sounds like. And having 15 clients for 2 people, that's a lot considering, everything that you're providing.
It probably seems like a lot, but I think, Karen, if you compare it to what we were used to
Well, yeah,
serving, it's a lot more comfortable, and we do have deep relationships, and it's a two-way street. So they love it when they call us, when we call them, and we love to call them now. So it's actually joyful, right? We're not working late hours. We close our virtual office at 5 p.m. every day. But I'm talking, I have no problem accepting a phone call from one of our partner families later, after hours, because they're friendly with us. We enjoy speaking with them. So yes, 7 or 8 on average per salaried employee of the firm probably, might seem like a lot, but we have a pretty good system, and most of our conversations are more about more joyful, abstract things, and kind of reaching and visionary conversations. And then behind the scenes, we're handling the technical aspects so that these people can do the things that they love to do and support the causes that they really care about. So it's a good fit right now. I mentioned there are 2 of us as salaried employees. We have subcontractors that assist us with other things, but we decided late last year that we do feel like we have a good thing going now that we're in business a little bit over a year. And so we do want to grow. We're looking to scale, but that means we need to find the right people to bring on and train. So we're taking a slow approach, but we have capacity to serve more, and we're looking to do that. So, and I wouldn't say that if I felt uncomfortable. Like, if you would have talked with me 7, 8 months ago, I would have said, no, we need to perfect what we're doing first.
sure.
I'd be overwhelmed. But right now we're in a good spot. But you do make a good point, though, right? Depending on the depth of the service you offer, really will tell you how many people you can serve, whatever business you're in, whether it's financial or anything else for that matter.
Well, and that's something that I had to learn the hard way this past year, as I was growing this specific podcast. And I have 18 others that I produce. And I was trying to work Monday through Friday, almost from 8 to 9 at night. And I realized, wait a second, I'm not giving you what you need, because I'm exhausted. In fact, I would go from podcast to podcast wondering, what am I podcasting right now? So I have slowly made that transition so that I can do my job better. And that's what I think people are looking for, is that insight. What is it I can do without just giving everything up? And also, how can I make a living at it if that's what my choice is? So tell our listeners how they can find you, and how they can learn more about your business.
Absolutely. The easiest way to learn about our business is initiateimpact.com. That's the name of our firm. You can find our contact information, and you can reach out to us directly, call us, whatever, initiateimpact.com. And then if you're looking for information about me, and I love to talk about generosity. So I do presentations and keynotes about generosity, related to finance, but not even. It's really more about the mindset. So I love to talk about that on podcasts and in front of audiences. And you can find information about me at bobdepasquale.com. And I'm pretty active on Twitter and Instagram as well. So we'd love to hear from people. I really love talking about this. So Karen, thank you for your questions, your platform, and the work that you're doing too, man. 18 podcasts, that's a lot. You're doing a lot of production. So you're very productive, let me tell you.
And I have a secondary job that I do on the weekend, but I do
Wow.
love what I'm doing. And that's what makes the difference. If you love what you're doing, you can then support other people, rather than being out there supporting people and hoping that you get something from it. Instead, I just share what I love to do with others. Now, if y'all didn't get everything that Bob said about how you can find him, go back and look at the show notes. We'll have his links in there. Please, don't let another day go by without, saying, hey, I'm not afraid of money. Let's let's get some control. I mean, everything is costing us a little bit more today. But there are ways to keep those costs down, and I'm learning them just by, checking out prices and checking out what I'm doing and making better choices than I did when things were less cost. So, make the most of today. And Bob, I want to thank you so much. And thanks, Stacy, for letting you, I don't know if she let you, but for you participating in this. Maybe the next time we'll have the two of you and we can get in a little deeper. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, because you let me out of the cage just for this hour.
Well, we appreciate that. Have
funny.
a great day.
Thanks,
Bye-bye
Karen.
now.